The House of Representatives will consider a trio of government funding bills for 2025 this week as they weigh in on measures for funding the Departments of Homeland Security, Department of State, and Defense and Foreign Operations. Now, President Biden has already threatened to veto the measures. In a statement of administration policy yesterday, the president took aim at the conservative policy provisions that Republicans have included in the appropriations measures. Joining me now to discuss this is Congressman Robert Aderholt, who serves on the House Appropriations Committee. He represents the 4th Congressional District of Alabama. Congressman Aderholt, welcome back to the program.
Tony, always good to be on Washington Watch and good to be with you, and thanks for having me on.
Well, it's good to see you. I'm glad you made it into D.C. last night. We crossed paths in the airport there in Atlanta, and you got in earlier than I did, but we're both here. So let's talk about the appropriations bills that were set to go before the Rules Committee earlier this afternoon that the House is to take up this week. Give us the latest.
Well, there's 3 appropriation bills that you referred to a little bit earlier, and really they deal with our national security. The Defense Appropriation Bill will be brought up, is scheduled to be brought up this week, as well as the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill, and then the Foreign Operations Appropriation Bill. Now, the foreign operation actually it deals with how we deal with other countries, with foreign governments. A prime example of that is how we're helping Israel. And in the legislation, we're again supporting Israel to make sure that we do everything we can to stand by an ally that's been with us for such a long time. I think the amount that we're planning to put in this bill for Israel alone will be about $3.3 billion. But overall, the legislation is the funding mechanism for really national security, homeland security, and our foreign operation as we through the Department of State. Now, one thing that I do want to mention that is in these appropriation bills that I want to really give a lot of credit to the Speaker and to the Republican leadership is that they have required, and obviously there's many of us who are so glad to see that, is that we have got pro-family and pro-life riders that are in this legislation. Just to give an example of some of the things that we're including in here is for example, the Defense Appropriation Bill prohibits paid leave and travel or related expenses of a federal employee or their dependents to obtain an abortion or an abortion-related service. Also protects against religious discrimination, and it prohibits the recruiting, the hiring, or promotion of any person who's been convicted or charged anything related to child pornography or sexual misconduct. So the Republicans want to put those riders in there to make sure that the money that we send to the Department of Defense or we send to Homeland Security is going to make sure that we have pro-family policies that are in there, or the money can't be spent.
And I failed to mention in the introduction, you are also the chairman of the Values Action Team in the House, and so many of those riders there are a part of your work in advancing the values on Capitol Hill. So is that the reason that the administration, President Biden announcing yesterday that if these 3 bills were to make their way through Congress, he would veto them?
Well, obviously, this is a big part of it. I mean, he also disagrees with the funding amounts, but obviously, he does not want to see the amount that we're spending on defense. Probably would like to see more money spending on foreign governments. Obviously, we have to work with foreign governments, just like Israel and a lot of our friends and allies. We want to make sure that we do everything we can to help make sure that they are in good positions around the world, especially those that embrace democracy. But obviously, these pro-life riders, pro-family riders that are included in here is a big thing of why the Democrats won't be voting for these bills. And the president has said he will veto them. We will actually have to fight with this when we get with the Senate. The Senate will probably pass these bills And then, as you know, Chuck Schumer is in charge of the Senate. These riders will not be included. These pro-life, pro-family riders will not be included over there. So when we go to conference, we'll have to fight for them just like we do every year. And it's always uphill battle. I don't want to paint this as a rosy picture, because so many times the Democrats will have a stronger hand, especially with Biden in the White House. So it's going to be a battle, but we're going to fight and do everything we can to keep them in there as we go to conference.
Well, and you fought to the end in this last year's appropriation, refusing to support the appropriations bills without these riders. And being a leader in the Appropriations Committee, that's a pretty bold stand. Talk for a moment. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, a lot of my colleagues on the Appropriations Committee and everything was probably none too happy, but there were some things in that appropriation bill, not only the riders that were stripped out, but also the earmarks that were included. And was just very disconcerting, and I had to vote no. But I'm always trying to vote yes on these legislation because I want them to be pro-family and pro-life.
We need some help. We need some help in the Senate to have the same approach in the Senate, and then maybe we can get this onto the president's desk, a good president, and we can actually see it come into law. Talk about the funding for the Homeland Security and the resistance from Democrats. What's going on there?
Well, obviously, Homeland Security deals with the border, and we are actually doing a lot to try to increase funding for the border. Ultimately, as you know, the president really controls, at the end of the day, what happens on the border. And that's why it's so important that we get somebody else in the White House like Donald Trump who's going to make this priority. But there are $600 million that is included for the construction of the southern border wall. As you know, Trump was very supportive of that, but the Biden administration has not been. But we want to include $600 million. I know that's not going to build the entire wall, but at least we're working toward that. And I think that's something that most Americans support. Also, it sustains funding for 22,000 Border Patrol agents and actually funds 50,000 detention beds, which I'm almost certain that is the most that has ever previously been appropriated. So there's a lot of good things in these appropriation bills. Appropriation bills are never perfect, but obviously you have to go through the process and work with the other side. But what we want to do is make it the best appropriation bills possible as we move forward.
Congressman Aderholt, I know you have to go. You got another commitment. Very quickly, final question. If the House is able to pass this legislation, these three appropriations bills followed by others, does that put the House and the Republicans in a stronger position in the negotiations with the Senate?
Oh, no question. I mean, we come to the table united. That does help. And obviously, it helps Mike Johnson, who I know is a mutual friend of both of us, so that when he goes and ultimately, at the end of the day, when he meets with Leader Schumer and they try to hash these out, knowing that he's got the backing of the House majority makes all the difference.
Congressman Robert Aderholt, thanks so much for taking time to join us this evening. Always great to have you on the program.
Thanks, Tony. Always good to be with you, and we'll be in touch.